Joining us now, once again, is Lieutenant General Todd Semonite. He's the Chief of Engineers and Commanding General of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. General, it's a real honor to have you back with us tonight. Thank you so much for making time.
Hey, Rachel, you and I talked about 11 days ago, and in those 11 days, I've flown around to several places in the United States. And boy, you just think about the devastation that's out there. You talk about the heroics of the medical community. I mean, I just can't say enough. The thoughts and prayers of all of us are those that have been devastated by this virus. And we're just so proud to be on part of a world-class team to try to make a little bit of a difference here.
11 days feels like about 11 years, and that's just for me who has this cushy desk job. I can't imagine how long it feels to you. I have to ask, over that time since we last spoke, what have you learned? What have been the new challenges, new difficulties, anything surprising that has arisen as you and the Army Corps have been pursuing this mission all over the country?
So I think that's the main thing, is that this virus gets a vote. This virus has been changing, and you can't just figure out what is the plan and build out the plan. So when we went into this concept, we really did think that we'd have a lot more capability to do things like hotels and dormitories. And we were a little nervous of the great big convention center because we weren't sure we could actually put COVID in there. What we have learned is that we're able to build this out. And you talked about Detroit and Chicago. Boy, what some phenomenal players up there. I met with Governor Whitmer, and we walked around and we looked at the center. Governor Pritzker was at the one down here. But we're able to go into that convention center. We got to seal a lot of the gaps. There's little tiny air gaps. And then you've got to be able to modify the HVAC system to be able to get to that pressure differential. And then you talked about the copper pipes. We did do this in Javits initially, but we came in and put oxygen. So instead of having to have little oxygen tanks where everybody's bed, we actually brought in central piping with oxygen to be able to modify that center. So every single time we build one, we have a standard design. You and I talked about that. And then we continue to modify the standard design and then site adapt it, power it down, and to be able to have decentralized execution at the point of need. So it's been a very, very evolving concept, but as a result, we're getting better and better capabilities.
That's fascinating. I was thinking exactly about that conversation that you and I had 11 days ago about the Javits Center, and you explained here on our air that it was explicitly for non-COVID patients. You said that it was very hard to take an arena capability like the Javits Center and make it COVID compliant. But now not only have you done it in lots of other arenas, you have been able to change course at the direction and the request of the government to make that Javits Center place COVID compliant as well. It sounds like you've exceeded your own expectations there.
Well, and it really goes back to this ability of being responsive to the needs of the mayor and the governor. Again, we work for FEMA. We're part of the federal team, but it goes back to, and you had a great discussion with Governor Newsom about this. Where's the governor want to go with their plan? And then how do we continue to adapt? And obviously in New York, because of the different changes in some of the medical populations, we were asked to be able to adapt. But the team rallied, and as a result, we've got a very, very capable facility tonight that's taking care of people.
How do the projections of when and where different places are going to hit their apex patient load, how do those things factor into your decision making? Obviously, every state in the country basically is coming to you, asking you to prioritize their locations, asking you to build there. Do those projections about who's going to be in the worst circumstances when factor into your decision making process in terms of where you go first?
So they definitely do. And I think tonight we've done about 828 different assessments. So that's a lot of different buildings to look at. But we're really down into building out probably 40 or 50 of those because a lot of those, the states have decided they might not need them or something. But what we've done with our modeling, and it's hand in hand with Vice President Pence's task force, is every single city has a curve. The Governor Newsom talked about it. Some are a plateau, some are a pike, some are going to be a couple weeks down the road. So when we look at a facility, we go in very detailed analysis with a lot of the same fundamental modeling parameters, and then we build out that particular city. And I've said this before, we can't tell our guys you get 3 or 4 weeks as that's when somebody wants it done. We say, here's when the mayor needs to have it. Here's when the governor needs to have it. We need a plan here where it's going to be a 21-day build. And then we'll go to the contractors and say, this is going to be 24/7. This is where we need you to turn on and give you every single thing you have because we do not want to be late to need. And we're pushing real hard on the other facilities we've got. But right now, we continue to think we can just barely stay ahead of the curve in all of those key cities.
General, one last brief question. Is there anything that's going wrong? Is there anything that you need that you don't have? Is there anything that the American people should know about your needs in this incredibly important mission that you're on that you need help for?
I don't think there is. And I'll just 2 quick points. One is I still worry to a degree that there might be some leaders out there who are thinking they're optimistic. And so we keep going to the governor and say, here's what we're looking at. What are you looking at? Do you have enough beds? And to try to make sure that those decision makers are making those decisions. Because, Rachel, we're out of time. We've got 2 or 3 weeks left. But if we don't start a build in the next couple of days, we've missed that window. And the other thing is that the president, the vice president, the secretary of defense, they called me about a week and a half ago on my cell phone and said, Todd, what do you need to be able to continue to focus? And whether it's the administration, the governors, everybody's all in by trying to make sure we're focused at one thing, and that's to be able to take care of this bed shortage and to be able to make sure we're stepping up where we need to be able to take care of these great Americans.
Lieutenant General Todd Semonite, Chief of Engineers, Commanding General of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Sir, it's an honor to have this time with you. Thank you for helping us understand what you're doing, and Godspeed to you and everybody who's working with you.
Rachel, and have us back again, because every week this is changing. I don't have a clue what's going to happen in 10 days, but you need to know the Corps of Engineers and the Department of Defense are fully committed to stay ahead of it.
Absolutely, sir. Say the word. All right. We'll be right back. Stay with us.